Mr. Pekoski, thanks for being here. I've got some questions for you, and to be frank with you, I've got some concerns about your record. Let's start with your decision to allow illegal immigrants to use arrest warrants as a form of ID at TSA checkpoints. In response to a congressional inquiry on this, you responded, I'm going to quote you now, TSA established a process where it will accept certain DHS-issued forms for non-citizens and non-U.S. nationals who do not otherwise have acceptable forms of ID for presentation at security checkpoints. And then you went on to list the forms that TSA would accept that included a warrant for arrest of an alien, a warrant of removal or deportation, the order of release on recognizance, an order of supervision, a notice to appear, an arrival and departure form, which included a printout of an electronic record, or an alien booking record. Now, I wrote to you on January 31st of this year asking you about this. Have you responded to this letter yet?
No, sir, we have not responded, but I will respond.
I didn't think so.
I will respond tomorrow.
Okay. Right after today's hearing. It's amazing how that works.
Well, actually, I saw a response earlier, and it didn't meet.
Do I have the response?
No, you don't, but you'll have it tomorrow.
Right after today's hearing. Maybe we should have more of these hearings. We may get more. This is July, isn't it? I sent it to you in January. That's a very long time to respond to a letter that is 2.5 pages long. So let's just see if we can get some answers now. How many individuals have presented TSA with arrest warrants or deportation notices and were permitted to travel in this calendar year?
Under 1,000, sir.
How does this policy comport with 18 U.S.C. 1325, which criminalizes improper entry into the United States by an alien?
Sir, these individuals that have these arrest warrants, those arrest warrants were issued by the Border Patrol or a customs officer, and they serve as a beginning to our identity verification process. So you can't walk up to a checkpoint, wave that form, and then you go right through into screening. We go through a process to verify that you are the person that you claim to be, and that you are receiving the level of screening, which always includes enhanced screening when people don't have the proper identification.
So if somebody who presents an arrest warrant is subject to an in-person interview with the airport's federal security director?
They have an interview with the officers that are on scene at the checkpoint, but that's not all that's happening. What those officers are doing are they're talking to...
When you say the officers on scene at the checkpoint, what are we talking about?
The transportation security officers, the uniformed officers at the checkpoint.
Okay, but not the federal security director.
They will bring in the federal security director if needed.
Well, why would that person not be needed if you have someone who's an illegal immigrant?
Right. So we aren't looking at whether a person is legal or illegal in the country. Our function is to make sure that...
Why not?
Because our role is to make sure that people that might pose a risk to transportation that's significant enough to either require enhanced screening or to not allow them to fly, that the proper...
So your position is someone who is known to have violated the laws of the United States does not thereby need enhanced screening? You're not concerned about this person as a security threat?
Sir, there are people every day that violate the laws of the United States that fly. We look for things that are related to transportation security.
And you don't think someone who is by definition, somebody who presents a warrant for arrest, you don't think that necessitates enhanced screening?
They get enhanced. All of those individuals get enhanced screening.
You just told me that it doesn't necessarily involve any interview with the federal security director, and you also said that you may well let them get on airplanes. And in fact, you've allowed at least 1,000 people to get on airplanes this year, calendar year alone.
Right, but enhanced screening and getting on an airplane are two very different things. You know, you can.
So I just don't understand why you have. I mean, I think for every person watching this hearing who has experienced the TSA screening process, it can often be very onerous. It's very long, and in fact, under your tenureship, the times for screening have gone up at airports all across the country, including in my home state of Missouri. St. Louis is now the 6th longest screening process in the country, despite the size of our airport there. People who have done absolutely nothing wrong, are law-abiding citizens in every respect, are subject to the most invasive screenings at these airports. Yet you're allowing illegal aliens to present warrants for arrest and waving them onto airplanes. How does that make sense?
Not doing that, sir.
You just told me that you've let 1,000 people travel on airlines who present to you warrants for arrest.
Yes,
right?
Sir. And they present those warrants. That warrant is the beginning of an identity verification process, which follows.
Why isn't it the end? Why isn't that the end of the process? And you say, sorry, you have a warrant for an arrest. We're not going to allow you to get on an airplane.
Because we want to identify who is presenting themselves at the screening checkpoint and ensure that those individuals get the right level of screening. For folks that do not have the acceptable forms of ID that we list on our webpage, they all receive enhanced screening. So every single person that presents a warrant receives enhanced screening before they're allowed to get on an aircraft. Now, if they don't pass that screening, they don't get on the aircraft.
Boy, I think you're going to have a hard time explaining to folks who wait for all of this time in these lines, who subject themselves voluntarily to all of the restrictions that you impose, who are patted down, who are frisked, who are asked to stop aside, who have their luggage rifled through, who have items confiscated from them, who are randomly selected, or sometimes perhaps not so randomly selected for enhanced screenings, but you're allowing illegal aliens with warrants for arrest to get onto airplanes, and you've allowed at least 1,000 of them in this calendar year. I mean, I just find that totally extraordinary. Let me ask you about something you did when you were briefly acting security of DHS from January 20th to February 2nd of 2021. You published a memo during that time that enacted a 100-day moratorium on almost all illegal immigrant removals from the United States, as well as a 100-day review of DHS immigration law enforcement policies. Thankfully, this was blocked by a federal judge. I just want to have you explain. I don't understand why you were trying to reduce border enforcement capabilities at a time when we were and are experiencing record levels of illegal immigration.
Sir, we don't have enough resources, clearly, to handle the number of people that are coming across the border. We were trying to focus the resources that we have. I mean, no agency in this government has all the resources they need to do the jobs that they've been asked to do.
So, I'm sorry. So your answer is that you wanted to do less enforcement and just ignore everybody who was here before November 1st, 2020?
Not at all. We wanted to do more effective enforcement.
Here's what you attempted to do. You tried to narrow DHS's enforcement abilities to include only three types of illegal aliens. 1, spies and terrorists. 2, aliens who entered after November 1st, 2020, or those convicted of aggravated felonies and were released from incarceration on or after the date of your memo. I mean, that's a significant narrowing. Basically, if you came before November 1st, 2020, and you issued this in January 2021, you're just off the hook.
So those are enforcement priorities, but not all the enforcement that could occur. And if you read further in that memo, it allows for discretion by the officer. Those priorities are primarily for resource allocation decisions as to where the resources would be placed to be most effective. And I think those 3 priorities are 3 of the very top priorities that we ought to focus our limited enforcement capability on.
Well, I'm just glad that a judge blocked the attempt to do this. And I have to say, in terms of your priorities and what you have done from allowing those with arrest warrants to fly while subjecting law-abiding citizens to what you have done to your record of the terrible wait times and experience that you're putting law-abiding citizens through to this action, I just can't say that I agree with your priorities, Mr. Bukowski. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.